Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Matt Hawkins, founder of Entourage Effect Capital. Thank you very much for joining me today, Matt.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can email me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right, Matt, I always like to get started with the simple one. So, how did you get started in the cannabis industry?
Well, that's a simple question, not so simple answer, I guess. It's I've been in private equity my whole career, 25 years. Raised numerous funds on my own. I've worked for an institutional fund. I've been associated with a couple of family offices. In 2014, we sold a multifamily acquisition platform, and looking for my next thing to do, I went into private lending, which I had done in the downturn, just to kind of see what was out there, what kind of deals were floating around. And obviously, in 2012 is when Oregon, the state of Washington, the state of Colorado all went recreational legal use for cannabis. And I didn't know much about it back then, other than there were warehouse owners in Denver looking to refinance their mortgages out of commercial debt into private debt, which would then give them access to or being able to lease their facilities to marijuana growers, which they couldn't do with a commercial loan. So they were paying really high yields. I thought it was interesting. And so we actually closed on a couple of loans. But my luck and timing moment was I had what I thought was a premonition that the yields would dry up on the real estate side because that would get more competitive. But I figured if I could figure out how to underwrite the cannabis assets themselves, which is kind of what I did, in other industries for most of my career, and if I could raise some money around that, then I'd have a first mover advantage because there was no capital available really to startups that were in the space back then. And so that's what we did. We raised a little trading capital, made 20 some odd investments out of Fund One. Fund One's been a great success. We had a lot of nice exits, close to we'll end up probably being a 4 times multiple when it's all said and done. But very early stage investing back then. Fund Two was a little bit different, raised a lot more money. That was a $75 million fund, including co-invest. But that was more like Series A. We matured along with the industry, went away from, the angel investing, so to speak, that we were doing in Fund One because the industry had a little bit later stage opportunities for us. We're now raising for Fund Three, which is totally different. It's now growth equity for later stage companies. And we're writing much bigger checks because that's what companies need that are trying to get to the next step to build scale in advance of legalization, which we think will happen, sometime in our 5 to 7 year hold period of our third fund, which is target of 150 million. And we've raised about half of it so far.
When you started out, was it 2012, did you say?
2014.
2014. It's only been 8 years, and it seems like the industry has come so far from the first fund to the third. Did you imagine that it would progress so quickly? I never really stopped to think like how we could get from point A to point B. I mean, those first couple of years, I was trying to fly under the radar screen a lot just because, hell, I didn't want to go into jail. Right. I didn't know, regulatorily, I kind of had my arms around the fact that it would be a really, really big stretch to, for it to be deemed that I was doing, something, that would be worthy enough of the federal government throwing me in jail. But nevertheless, that did keep me up at night back then. That changed obviously as time went on, and but there's been so many speed bumps along the way, and we've gone from headwinds to tailwinds to headwinds, and back and forth that I really haven't spent a lot of time on just thinking about how we got here from there, because I still think it's evolving so rapidly in so many different levels in the industry that, but then again, out of the same breath, 8 years seems like, seemed like just yesterday we got started.
With these headwinds, tailwinds, and all this uncertainty, why was it important for you to focus specifically on legal cannabis investment?
Oh, I've always been, the type of investor that said, if you can, try to avoid competition, whether it's at the point of investment or with what you're investing in. And being one of the first investors in the space, we absolutely did that. What's been probably more surprising to me than anything else is the lack of capital that's still in play in the industry, and the lack of real organized capital providers like our firm that are in the space. I mean, there's a handful of well-respected firms that have been doing this for as long as we have, or maybe not quite as long, but there's a lot of first-time funds that have a hard time raising money. Heck, we have a hard time raising money, and this is our third fund. $150 million fund for the cannabis industry is pretty damn big. For any other, $20 billion domestic industry, there's probably private equity funds that are managing north of $1 billion in their latest fund. So it's just a different animal. But that also, therein lies the opportunities, to say.
I understand that it's an opportunity for yourself. With that lack of access to capital, how does that impact the cannabis industry?
It impacts it dramatically. You're right. It's an opportunity for folks like us on the buy side. It doesn't mean that's the way we want it. Right. We want the industry to grow faster. We can generate our returns quicker. But we've got political headwinds that, at every turn, at the municipal, state, and federal level for, even at where it's legal. And so, not to mention the regulatory hurdles of overtaxation and burdensome regulatory, regimes. And so there's just a lot of things to work through. And so it's obviously, it's not for the weak. And we're we feel like we got a pretty good, got our arms around, where the opportunities are and what we've done to date and what we're going to do. And that, we feel like we can navigate the choppy waters pretty well.
So as one of the first investors in the cannabis industry, how do you stay ahead of new competitors coming into the market?
Well, like I said, I don't really think there are a whole lot. There's several firms that we work closely with because we're either already in the capital stacks together or we look at deals together. We don't compete on deals. We either create the deals ourselves or companies want us in their cap stack because, we've got a good track record. We've got a good reputation. We know everybody in the industry that we want to know. And that's, all the good actors. And so we can, that's why that's one of the main things about our name, Entourage Effect Capital, is that we can bring the entourage effect to our investments and combine our strengths and talents with theirs and our networks. And, we want our portfolio companies to work together. We think it's beneficial because it's one big ecosystem. So, I would love for there to be more capital available, but until it's either quasi-legal or legal, institutional capital primarily is going to be on the sidelines.
So of these 70 or so investments and more than $130 million that you've deployed into the industry, what would you say is your greatest success story?
You mean from an actual investment standpoint or just in general?
I guess from both, because maybe they're not the same.
I don't think they are. I think that I'll say the greatest success story. I'll say, proud moment type thing is, it happens a lot now, and that, we've got a team of 9 professionals that, that I'm proud to say that, they're my partners, they work with us. They're all very, very talented people. And, I didn't think back in 14 when I was doing this on my own, I really didn't envision that. So that certainly makes me very proud. But what makes me really excited and proud is when, I mentioned this earlier, when companies in the industry that are well respected, come to us and say, "Hey, we want you to. We're not really out shopping this deal. We want you to be our investor." And so that means a lot to us. And so it also helps with, credible deal flow. I used to hate saying it or hearing it in other industries when someone would say they had proprietary deal flow. Well, we certainly have that now, because there's A, like I said, people coming to us, and B, there's just not a lot of people out there like us that have access to these deals. We do. So that's from that side. The other side is, I think our 3 biggest returns to date have been, we were early investors in Ebu that sold to Canopy Growth. And that was almost like a 16 or 17x, when you net it out. We were early investors in GTI when they were private. That obviously has been a great success. But then one that doesn't get really talked about much is we kind of were in an off market PIPE, a private investment in public entity in Terracin. So, and that would generate a great return as well. So those are 3 examples of, but for all those, we've had some things we've had to scratch and claw for to get our returns. Those were a little bit easier than others.
With the scratching and clawing, with any sort of investment, there is a great deal, or there is risk. What were some of the ones that didn't pan out, and what happened?
Well, I'm not going to mention any of them by names, but I will tell you this: every deal that hasn't worked out, and thank God there hasn't been many of them. We've really only missed on, out of the, like you said, it's not quite 70, but it's close. There's really only been a handful of investments that haven't worked out. And the common thread in that is that we misread what we thought was a good management team. At the end of the day, if you don't have a good management team, or your underwrite isn't the way you think it is, or even worse, if you took a shortcut on underwriting that management team, then it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. And we've learned our lessons the hard way with that. And so, it hasn't happened in a long time, but after the last time it happened, we said never again. So every time we do a deal now, it's like we have to be, 100% convinced this is the right team to lead this, in their sector, to be the dominant player.
As you were growing your team, you started off as a one-man band. What were some of the things that you looked for in partners as you grew Entourage?
Well, the blessing for me is that my 2 partners, Joe Shapiro and Andy Sterner, were working in the cannabis space around the same time that I was, just in a kind of a separate vehicle. They had bought a platform that was like an incubator model and turned that around. And we started doing some things together. We had co-invested in some deals we didn't know that needed some working out. We worked together on those, and we decided to do the second fund together and combine forces. And it was a leap of faith for all of us. It's turned out to be, I think, a gift to all 3 of us. And then we, built our team around, the 3 of us with skills that we needed to be complementary with the 3 of ours. And we've done that with the rest of our team. And we're, still super excited about, especially some of the younger guys and gals on our team that are going to be, learning as they go. And it's a whole lot of fun.
From a relationship standpoint, previous to cannabis, was your relationship as an investor, is it different in the cannabis industry from experiences that you've had outside of the cannabis industry?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. I mean, at the end of the day, you're still backing people and backing their vision and, believing together, that you can accomplish the goals as partners. And again, you can take out cannabis and insert the word widget, and that's the same. Mm-hmm. The difference is that we're all learning daily on how this industry is evolving. I mean, none of us will ever see a situation where, an existing 50, 60, $70 billion domestic market is sitting there waiting to be converted from an illicit one into a legalized one. I mean, it's the damnedest thing I've ever heard of in my life, and it's right before our very eyes. And then on top of that, it's capitalized by a very small number of individuals and family offices in the space. And then you throw in the regulatory aspect of things, and it's a chocolate mess. So we're just trying to work our way through all of that. And I think we're all learning as we go.
Now, you've talked about people, and you talked about management teams with investment targets. So according to the EEC website, you invest in companies that are positioned to scale ahead of federal legalization. What are some of the common traits or indicators that a potential investment target is poised for success?
Yeah, and I think that statement on our website is primarily focused on what we're trying to accomplish with our third fund. Okay. Obviously, that thesis wasn't the same in our predecessor funds, but now with maturing along with the industry, like we keep talking about, I mean that's where we are. And I'll give 3 examples. I mean, we want to, at its core, our philosophy now is we want to build scale in as many different sectors of the industry by backing the dominant players in those sectors in advance of what we think will be some type of legalization event in the next 5, 7, 10 years, whatever the number is. And some examples of that are, I'll use 3 examples just out of Fund 3. We've made 8 investments out of Fund 3, but I'll talk about 3. One is Curio Wellness in Maryland. Dominant player, it's a vertically integrated player and single state operator in Maryland. It's now expanding to other states. They're going to be a dominant player in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, and we're proud to be their capital partner. The next one is Organic Remedies in Missouri, a medicinal state that's poised to become recreational soon. And Organic Remedies, again, is one of the top players in the single state operation, vertically integrated in the state of Missouri. And they are about to expand to additional states. So again, Midwest concept of a scale building opportunity. But we also look at, opportunities to create scale and find, technologies that are just crazy disruptive on the ancillary side where it's not plant touching. And one example of that is a company we invested in called Hound Labs, which is the only THC breathalyzer on the market right now. And it's the only one that's been commercialized as well. It measures THC content in your body at that particular moment in time, which obviously is key for industries that are concerned about impairment, like transportation companies, logistics companies, distributors, you name it. Not to mention even what'll happen at some point with law enforcement. So it's that's the type of thing that we saw that we just, we underwrote and said, this is, best eggs and sliced bread in that sector. And they have a kick-ass management team, which is the common thread of all those companies I just mentioned.
No, it sounds like Hound Labs is poised to really have a big end of this year and beginning of next year. I understand that the company did run into a little bit of supply chain issues, but still has a lot of product coming out to market this year still.
Yeah, no, without getting into the details of their pipeline, but they've got a substantial amount of revenue sitting there in purchase orders that they think will be fulfilled by, end of this year, first of next year. And so, yeah, I mean, look, supply chain issues are what they are at this point. There's only so much we can all do as a country with our reliance upon others, but that's just where it is. And they've done an admirable job of getting the materials in to fulfill orders.
So that was your philosophy in Fund 3. What was your philosophy in Fund 1 and Fund 2?
Well, totally different times. I mean, Fund 1 was, I knew I was part of a rising tide. Where could I find, the best unique companies at the right price that were positioned for great success? And we got lucky and found a lot of them. I mean, like I mentioned, Ebu, GTI, we were investors in Acreage when they were High Street Capital, a private company. And we luckily sold at the right time with all those companies. We sold several companies to Curaleaf that were single state operators. So Fund 1 was a big win for us. Fund 2 was very we wanted to build into we were really focused on California in Fund 2. And that had its, ups and downs. I mean, but now we're positioned in California with our investment in Harborside, soon to be Statehouse Holdings. That was a huge effort on our part, and it's obviously a huge part of Fund 2 with positioning Harborside for the success that we think they're going to have now because of after what we'll talk about this in a second, but. After what we've done with Harborside, they're now one of the largest single state operators in the state of California. So that was a big focus of Fund 2. And then Fund 3, like I said, we've kind of moved east, focused on scale building and some of the other limited license states and then some other ancillary plays. And, if the right opportunity comes up in California, we'll jump on it.
When you look at a management team, what do you like to see and what are some potential red flags?
Well, the red flags obviously are, ethics and morals, track record, all that has to be, above board and excellent. We typically don't back people that have been, operating illicitly, trying to get into the legalized side, right away. I understand there are some, legacy operators that have done a nice job, putting the past behind them, and that's a little bit different story. But we're probably not going to be that first investor out of the gate for that. But we're the common thread, as I keep saying, is that they've had experience at this point, and with success in both cannabis and outside of cannabis. And usually the deals that we're looking at has that component, which is great. And not to mention the fact, the kind of talent that's entering the space right now is unbelievable. I mean, it's nowhere near what it was just 2 years ago, where C-level folks from major CPG companies and pharma and nutraceuticals and beverage. I mean, all these people are now, clamoring to get into the space, and they wouldn't have thought about that 2 years ago. So that's a really, really cool part about the industry as well right now.
Is that good for the industry to have, executive types from other industries to all of a sudden want to jump in?
I certainly think so. I mean, look, at the end of the day, founders, I think some of the smartest and best founders in any industry are the ones who can say, okay, I built this company from, X to Y, and I need somebody who can finish the job and take it from Y to Z. And all the while, have me there supporting you and obviously having my piece of the action, but checking the ego at the door and saying, I know what I don't know. The entrepreneurs and the owner operators that get in trouble are the ones that try to do all that. And so I think that the industry now is poised to be in that position of the handoff to say, okay, here it is. I've given it to you on a silver platter. Go take it and run with it, and let's all be the beneficiaries of that. That's happening right now, and so that's why it's such a critical hire or a critical partnership when that thing takes place.
What are your plans for Stateside or Statehouse? I apologize.
Well, so it was a heavy lift for us. I mean, we were, I'll just kind of tell the backstory a little bit. We were investors in Harborside in Fund One through the farm, which was prior to 2016. And before 16 was when California went fully rec. You couldn't be a holding company. So Harborside had Harborside Farms, which was a totally separate entity than Harborside, the dispensary or dispensaries. And so we didn't own anything in the dispensary, but we owned a big chunk of the cultivation facility in Salinas. When 16 occurred and we merged, because of how big the farm had gotten, we were able to negotiate a pretty nice piece of the larger pie, which made us large shareholders in Harborside. And then when we took it public, we led the Series A. I jumped on the board, and that led a whole long period of time of really some frustration for me, because there were times where I felt like I was the only true commercial voice on the board. And it ultimately led to what we did in the fall of 2020, which was a full-on dissenting shareholder movement that was designed to, at that point, and we were going to do an advance of a proxy fight if we needed to. But luckily, we settled the company, and we were able to take over the board of Harborside. And at that point, we said we were set out to do three things. One, we were going to make Harborside the preeminent single state operator in the state of California through accretive M&A. We were going to work with the IRS to settle our debt and stop being antagonistic with them. And three, we were going to hire a world-class CEO. And we've done all three now. And the culmination of that was just this last March, where we closed on Urban Leaf and Loudpack on top of the Sublime acquisition. And now we have basically a four-way merger where we're completely vertically integrated. Got, 15 dispensaries now. We're going to be a revenue run rate that went from 50 million to, I think, just under 200 million. And we, feel like we're going to be poised for great success going forward, because we're going to continue to, I think we just announced at the end of our quarterly report is that we, we're able to save $10 million on cost cutting measures through the synergies of the merger. And so along with that and some potential smart acquisitions, I think we're going to be in a position to not only be cash flow positive, but be the dominant player in California, just because we're going to capture margin at every single level in the supply chain.
What's taken more of your time these days? Is it Statehouse or is it EEC?
No, not anymore. I mean, Ed Schmaltz was the CEO that we hired, who came from Urban Leaf. I'm still chairman of Harborside, but there was a period of time where I was interim CEO, and that took up a lot more time than we all thought for our firm, not just me. But now Ed, who I mentioned, he's an example of the talent that's come into the space. I mean, he was, he was at one point the COO of Patagonia. He was the former CEO of FAO Schwartz. He's a Goldman guy. I mean, he's a real operator. And then he was obviously CEO of Urban Leaf, and he was the CEO of Calyx Peak. So Ed knows his way around, a balance sheet, knows his way around a public company, knows his way around a cannabis company. So we're just happy to have him. So that gave me the opportunity to kind of get back to my day job, which is, running this company, but also trying to raise capital for our third fund and, working with our team to place the bets.
What did you mean when you said you were the only commercial voice in the room?
Well, there was a lot of, look, let's face it. There's cannabis when cannabis has a long history of not only, promoting the plant, but also being, very active in their voices on various causes, which, by the way, we agree with almost every single one of them. But there comes a point in time, when you have a fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders to start driving revenue and reducing costs and, producing cash. And it just didn't feel like that was always the focus. And there wasn't a sense of urgency either. And that's what led us to the point where we just decided, let's just see if we can take matters into our own hands. And, we obviously were successful with an extremely large percent of the vote of the shareholders who approved our plan.
Is the plan to stay in cannabis for the foreseeable future?
For our firm and for me?
Yeah, for you.
Absolutely. I don't want to be anywhere else. Look, I want to be here when there's, tens of, 20s of billions of dollars that are coming from institutions that are chomping at the bit right now to get in. I want to be, telling those guys where to put their money and maybe managing some of that. Look, we're in a very, very good position to exploit this market, not only now, but going forward in really, really cool ways. And so, we want to build this firm into, managing $5 billion in a very, very short period of time. And we think we can, just by staying the course and doing what we're doing.
Do you have a personal connection to the plant?
I do, in a couple of ways. One, I enjoy the use of it every now and then. I'm not a huge user of it, but I do use it recreationally from time to time and enjoy it. The personal connection is my mother, actually. My mom has fibromyalgia, and she's had it for most of her adult life. And about 15 years ago, she was maybe 10, 12 years ago, a pain medical doctor prescribed her opioids just to mitigate the pain. And, she didn't know any better. She was a God-fearing woman who just did what the doctor told her to do. And, next thing we know, she's, it wasn't working out very well for her. And, her mind's moving faster than a mouth. And anyway, fast forward to, her coming to the realization that she needed to do something about it. She is now completely off opioids, and she takes medical marijuana for pain. It's just really in some cases, just a recreational gummy that's got, both CBD and THC in it. And it's been working wonders for her for several years now.
When you started, you said that, you were kind of constantly afraid of going to jail or scared of going to jail. How long did it take for that to go away, or is it still there a little bit?
No, it's not there. And I said that slightly tongue in cheek, but there were times where I can remember, when you wake up in the middle of the night, your mind's racing about God knows what. And there were several times where I woke up saying, wow, am I going to get in trouble here for doing this? But no, I haven't had a thought like that in many years now. So I'm not, that ship has sailed. Look, the tax revenue is so high at these states where it's legal, is that there is no way in hell you can put the genie back in the bottle, regardless if it ever goes federally legal. So I don't worry about that one bit.
I know we got to get out of here soon. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about either yourself, EEC, Statehouse, or anything else that you got cooking in the cannabis industry?
No, I think it's a nice chat. Just by the sheer nature of the name of the podcast, like I said earlier, we're not just plant touching investors. We're investors in ancillary plays. And so we're always looking for new opportunities, especially ones that are more later stage. And we'd be happy to take a look.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I know there's plenty of people out there looking for those opportunities as well.
Oh yeah, there are.
Excellent. Well, Matt, thank you very much for taking the time today, man. I really do appreciate it.
You bet. I enjoyed the chat.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to reach the podcast, you can email me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. All right. For Matt Hawkins, founder of Entourage Effect Capital, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.